Picture this. You're crossing a freezing ocean in an open wooden boat. Ice-cold waves crash over the sides. Wind cuts through you like knives. Your hands are numb. Your face burns from the cold. And here's the terrifying part. There's no fire to warm you up. No heaters, no shelter, no way to escape the brutal cold. This was real life for Viking sailors crossing the North Atlantic. So how did they survive icy seas without freezing to death? The answer might surprise you. It wasn't magic or secret technology. It was something much smarter. Before we dive in, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing history stories. Now, many people today believe Vikings must have had some trick for staying warm at sea. Maybe they heated stones and wrapped them in blankets. Maybe they hid small fires somewhere on the ship. Maybe they had secret heating systems we just haven't discovered yet. But here's the truth. This is a complete myth. Viking longships were open boats with no protection from the elements. The idea of fire on board wasn't just unlikely, it was impossible. Think about it, a wooden ship surrounded by water with sails made of cloth. One spark, one flame getting out of control, and the entire ship would go up in flames in minutes. Vikings were brave, but they weren't foolish. Fire at sea meant certain death. So what were Viking ships actually like? Viking longships were engineering marvels, but they offered zero protection from cold weather. These ships had no decks covering the crew. They had no cabins to hide in. They had no walls to block the wind. The crew sat right out in the open, completely exposed. When waves came crashing over the side, they hit the sailors directly. When freezing rain fell, it soaked everyone on board. When Arctic winds blew, there was nowhere to escape. Imagine sitting in a rowboat during a winter storm, but that storm lasts for days or even weeks. That's what crossing the North Atlantic was like for Vikings. There was absolutely nowhere to hide from the bitter cold. Every sailor felt every bit of that frozen misery. So how did they survive? The answer starts with their clothing, specifically wool. Vikings wore thick wool tunics that went down to their knees. They wrapped themselves in heavy wool cloaks that could be pulled tight against the wind. They layered wool clothing on top of more wool clothing. But why wool? Here's what makes wool absolutely amazing for cold, wet conditions. First, wool keeps you warm even when it's soaking wet. Cotton or linen would leave you shivering and in danger of freezing. But wool, it traps heat even when drenched. Second, wool dries incredibly fast in the wind. On a Viking ship with constant wind, wet wool clothing would dry relatively quickly. Third, wool is naturally waterproof on the outside while staying warm on the inside. For Vikings crossing icy seas, wool wasn't just helpful, it literally saved their lives every single day. But clothing alone wasn't enough. Vikings had another survival strategy: constant movement and shared body heat. On a longship, crews sat shoulder to shoulder on rowing benches. When they rowed, this could have created several advantages. Their muscles worked hard, likely generating body heat from the inside. Their blood pumped faster, which would help keep their fingers and toes from freezing. Sitting so close together, they probably created a pocket of shared warmth. The rowing itself was exhausting, but based on what we know about how the human body generates heat through activity, this movement likely helped them survive. Here's the harsh reality Vikings understood. As long as they kept moving, they could stay warm enough to survive. But if they stopped moving for too long, the cold would become dangerous. So they rowed and rowed and rowed, even when every muscle screamed for rest. The design of Viking ships also played a role in survival. These ships were light and incredibly flexible. Instead of trying to power through massive waves like a heavy ship would, Viking longships rode up and over the waves smoothly. This flexibility meant something crucial. Less water came crashing over the sides. Less water on board meant the crew stayed drier. Staying drier meant staying warmer. The ships were also built to move fast. Speed meant shorter journeys across dangerous cold water. A trip that might take weeks in a slower, heavier ship could be done in days with a Viking longship. Vikings didn't survive the cold by fighting it head-on. They survived by being smart, staying fast, and keeping as dry as possible while moving through those brutal icy seas. Of course, Vikings did use fire, but only in the right place, on land. After days at sea, when the ship finally reached shore, the crew would immediately pull the boat onto the beach or riverbank. Then, and only then, would they build fires. These beach fires were precious moments of relief. Sailors dried their soaking wool clothing. They warmed their frozen hands and feet. They cooked hot meals and rested their exhausted bodies. Vikings planned their voyages carefully, knowing they needed to reach land regularly. They couldn't survive weeks without landing. These stops weren't just convenient, they were absolutely necessary for survival. The fire they couldn't have at sea became their reward for making it through another brutal stretch of icy water. So let's paint a picture of what an actual day was like on a Viking ship crossing icy seas. You wake up before dawn, already cold and stiff. Freezing wind immediately hits your face. Your wool cloak is damp and heavy. You take your place on the rowing bench, your hands so numb you can barely grip the oar. Salt spray crashes over the side, stinging your eyes and face. Your fingers feel like blocks of ice wrapped around the wooden oar. But you row anyway, because everyone else is rowing, and because you know movement means survival. Hours pass, your back aches, your arms burn. The cold never stops. There's no fire to look forward to, no warm cabin to retreat to, no shelter at all. Just you, your crew, the wool on your back, and your own toughness. That's all you have against the ruthless freezing sea. So why do so many people today think Vikings must have had fire at sea? It's simple. We underestimate how tough ancient people really were. Our modern minds expect technology and comfort. We think there must have been some trick, some tool, some secret. But the truth is harder and more impressive. Vikings relied on human resilience, not clever tricks. They studied the weather and planned voyages during safer seasons. They respected the power of the ocean and prepared for the worst. They built their entire culture around toughness and endurance. To us, crossing an icy ocean without fire seems impossible. To Vikings, it was just what you did. It was normal. It was life. Here's what we need to understand. Vikings did not conquer the icy seas with fire or machines. They survived with thick wool clothing, constant movement, smart ship design, teamwork, and incredible courage. The freezing cold was always there, biting at them, testing them, and they faced it anyway. Day after day, voyage after voyage. They crossed distances we can't barely imagine in conditions that would send most people running for safety. All without fire, all without modern gear, just wool, muscle, and unbreakable determination. What do you think? Could you survive a Viking voyage across icy seas? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed learning about Viking survival, smash that like button and subscribe for more incredible history stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.